Before I introduce Dr. Zeedyk, this was her post yesterday with a picture of the beautiful Scottish Highlands, I think, or it was certainly on the way down to Glasgow on the train. And she wrote, "Look at those hills, that sunshine, the horizon of a landscape. I'm on a train and on my way to our ACE-aware nation event. I find myself thinking about what it would look like for Scotland to be an ACE-aware nation. All hills can be climbed." So to tell us how collectively we're doing with that ascent, please welcome Dr. Suzanne Zeedyk.
We have been on a journey. Scotland has been on a journey. It began almost 20 years ago with the Scottish Violence Reduction Unit, whose courageous police leaders argued that gang violence and murders could be reduced by paying attention to the way we love our babies. Lots and lots and lots of talking followed, and lots of action too, although that was often amongst small groups of professionals. In 2017, the public was finally able to join in when an unexpected one-hour documentary film on the science of adverse childhood experiences, that's ACEs, gave tens of thousands of us a new understanding of the biological impact of childhood, of its experiences of joy and fear, of safety and suffering. In 2018, the first ACE-aware Scotland conference was held, which Gary has already talked about. Can I add that to that first conference, nearly 2,500 members of the public gathered. They came because they wanted to, not because they were obligated to. They came because they were willing to think more deeply about childhood suffering. Willing to think about childhood suffering and the importance of childhood joy. And here we are, 5 years later, with 5 large gatherings under our belt, either live or online, because you might remember there was this thing called COVID. Please laugh, it wasn't fun. In the midst of our history, there was this thing called COVID that had a big impact on all of us. All of those events asked the same original question: could we be an ACE-aware nation? Is there a way to help all 5 million of us and all of our sectors and systems to better understand the science of childhood stress? Is there a way to encourage a cultural shift that puts connection at our core, that enables us to fully embrace the power of relationships? That's a big ask for a country of which some have said, maybe we don't actually like our children. Maybe we only tolerate them. I'm quoting John Carnacan there, one of the 2 co-founders of the Scottish Violence Reduction Unit who started this movement. And he, alongside Karen McCluskey, first took that risky step in 2005 of championing babies rather than prisons. Why am I starting here? Why am I starting the day looking backwards? Because I think histories are important. If that was my tweet of yesterday that Gary read out, my first tweet of this morning was about the men who worked in the dockyards on the Clyde. And Michelle Brennan-Jones, who you will hear after me, replied with her tweet that her grandfather died in those docks. Histories are important. They give you grounding, whether personally or societally. They let you know where you're starting from, and they orient you so that you can see more clearly where you're going. We have come a long way in only 6 years. We have so many more people who understand the human stress system, who start by asking themselves about what a child is feeling rather than how they're behaving, who use the language of co-regulation and distressed behavior and what happened to you and can I help, who link trauma-informed approaches to children's rights. We have gained an international reputation for that shift, as demonstrated by all the many international guests we have already heard from. Can I add my voice and say to all of you who have traveled far to get here, welcome to our shores. And we have so many more people who apply these insights not just to children or to others, but to themselves, which is celebratory. Because if we are to make change for children, then the only place that we can start is with the adults in the room, as the mantra championed by the Tigers team daily goes. But so many more people is far from everyone. It's very far. We are a long way yet from everyone getting it. And things are harder now than they were in 2018 or 2017 or 2005. We've lived through a pandemic, and many of us are exhausted, perhaps bereaved. Many families are going hungry. School attendance has dropped. Mental health worries are rising. Poverty is skyrocketing. Libraries and swimming pools are being closed. And alienation is rampant. We're in the midst of a cost of living crisis, or should I say a cost of greed crisis, given that trust in the UK government has plummeted so sharply. The reality of climate change confronts us daily. So alongside the celebrations are challenges. So I've asked lots of you why you came today. And the central answer seems to be that you believe that Gabor Maté can help us in thinking about how we approach those challenges. Knowing this gives us a collective frame for listening today, a communal orientation for where we might take the insights that he will share with us today. I think we're really grateful for that gift. So when he arrives, can we all keep in our spirit my welcome to him, my thank you to him for returning, in the midst of what was already a very packed European tour. He did not have to come. He chose to. And in a moment, we will welcome Michelle Brennan-Jones to the stage. Her very personal story reminds us why facing up to childhood suffering matters, and why we adults need to find the courageous, fierce curiosity that can keep us out of denial. But before I yield the floor to them, I want to say one more thank you. And I'm going to pause that just for a moment and say one more time, Dr. Maté, thank you for returning to Scotland in the midst. He came at just the right moment, eh? Before I yield the floor to Michelle Brennan-Jones and to Gabor Maté, I want to say one more thank you. And that thank you is to all of you. I want to be sure that you recognize a core strength of this ACE-aware movement that together we have built. At the center of the Scottish ACEs movement is a recognition of the power of relationships, of protective factors, of connection. I think we tend to take this characteristic a bit for granted. I think we treat it as obvious, as unremarkable. And I think we do that because that is the framing and the language that has been used from the outset of this movement. But relationships is not a framing of ACEs or trauma or behavior that is so readily embraced in other regions of the world, or indeed other regions or systems of the UK. For example, the British newspapers are currently full of debates about the use of isolation booths in schools and funding for therapeutic treatment of drug addiction and the threat of refugees to our communities. So I want to say, do not take the emphasis on relationships for granted. Know that this framing is much more radical in our country and in the Western world than it may feel like sitting in this room. Our grounding in relationships and in connection has both theoretical, scientific theoretical depth and demonstrated practical and economic benefits. Alongside the breadth of our movement, alongside the breadth of our reach across so many different communities and sectors and systems in our country, I personally regard our grounding in relationships as the central strength of the Scottish ACEs movement. It will serve us in the taxing months and years to come if we are able to call on that consciously as a strength. And so, with that call to action, or call to connection, please can I, on behalf of the entire ACE Aware Nation team, bid you a fabulous, brave day, full of energy and memory making and selfies and fierce curiosity. Thank you very much.